back to John chapter 16, and I promise this is our last week in John chapter 16. We've been there for a long time. One of the things that is easy for us to look at is we can look at the world around us, and we can think, where is God in all of this? Where is His sovereignty being exercised? God is the ruler yet. I love that line. Oh boy, I've forgotten it. Wait, I can do this. I got the magic switch here. So many verses to the song. God is the ruler yet. This is my Father's world. The battle is not done. So, just diving into the text. A little bit of this is review. Jesus says, John chapter 16, "In a little while you will see me no more. Then after a little while, you will see me." Now, the disciples, they're hearing this and they're getting kind of confused. Now, if you follow the Gospels, Jesus confused people a lot. Not because there was anything wrong with what he said, but there was something wrong with the people's ability to comprehend. They had their own matrices. What's the word I want? Their own paths of understanding. Okay, matrices would be good? All right, good. If Annika says it's the right word, we're going to go with that. Okay, matrices of understanding. If an electrician were to try to explain how wiring schemes work, I would say, oh, I know that. You've got the black wire, that's where the electricity comes out of, right? And it goes into the white wire, the ground, but sometimes the ground is green. Usually is? Okay, but see, Frank, in things that I've worked on, the ground ends up being white. So is it green or is it white? And what does the blue wire do? Now, I understand current. You take the light switch, you flip it up and down. And I can look at the wires and, I can see how they work. I don't know a thing about electricity. Shocking, isn't it? Sorry. That had to be there. I admire David as he's, I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but over time, the fluorescent lights are being changed over to LEDs. And so David, he opens that panel up, and there's like 1 million wires. Now, David, there's yellow, right? Blue, red. How many wires are there?
There's yellow, blue, orange, and red, and black, and white, and bare.
Okay, now I know that the bare wire is the ground. That much I know.
The equivalent ground.
See, I don't even know that, then it's the equivalent ground. Okay, case closed. Now, Dale or David could tell me things about, electrical circuits, and I could go, yeah, I get it. Then open up the panel, and I'm on the ground, shaking because I've shocked myself. So when Jesus would talk to the disciples, there were things that they should have known. Back when I was teaching some chemistry, it was conceptual chemistry, which was the lower level chemistry for students. They just needed to get a grade in science. And what I would do, it was amazing. I would, before the final exam, it was 50 questions. And I had a PowerPoint slide set up. Every question that was going to be on the final exam was on a PowerPoint slide, as well as the 4 answers that they could choose with the right answer being marked out. 50 slides. For a week and a half or so before the exam, I would go through the slides with the students every day. Now, this is after having taught the material. So you go through the slides. You would think the students would know. I had a third of the students fail, and fail miserably. I had a couple of students, they got 40%. The reason they got 40% is in that school, you couldn't get lower than 40%. If you got a 0, it would be counted as a 40%. So they should have known. They should have figured this out. All the information was there, but when it came down to it, they just went, what? Some of the disciples said to one another, what does he mean by saying, in a little while you will see me no more, and then after a little while you will see me because I am going to the Father? They kept asking each other, what does he mean by a little while? We can't understand what he's saying. Now imagine a classroom. It's a shop class. It's an electrician's shop class. And there's one student who says, boy, I'm not sure how this works. So he asks the doofus next to him, how does this work? And the doofus says, I don't know. Let's ask another doofus. And so they ask all the doofi. Now, just so you know, doofi is the plural of doofus. I made that up. Okay. So, but you have all these doofi and they're asking each other, I don't know. And the teacher is right there. Nobody stops to think, I think I need to go to the teacher and say, I know I should know this. We should all know, how does this work? And the teacher will go, oh, a student seeking knowledge. And they will go over it again. They'll go over it with all the class. And hopefully they'll figure it out. But so here the disciples, they don't want to ask Jesus because they're embarrassed. Now, all the things that Jesus was saying to them at this point would be understood in retrospect. None of them understood that Jesus would be raised from the dead, although Jesus said clearly, I'm going to be raised from the dead. Got this? And they're like, yeah. And they didn't understand it. He told them, it was clear, but they should have known. But then later, they understood. Remember on the road to Emmaus, you've got the people, and the two people are walking on the road to Emmaus, and Jesus meets with them. Jesus keeps them from understanding who he was, and they're walking, and Jesus explains everything to him, and they go, wow, it all makes sense now. It should have made sense before, but it didn't because our hearts are hard, and we're just kind of doofy sometimes and slow to understand. Jesus saw that they wanted to ask him about this, so he said to them, oh, are you asking one another what I mean when I said, in a little while you will see me no more, and after a little while you will see me? Very truly, I tell you, you will weep and mourn while the world rejoices. You will grieve, but your grief will turn to joy. It's going to get really, really bad. I've warned you about this in advance. It's going to get really bad. A woman giving birth to a child has pain because her time has come. But when the baby is born, she forgets the anguish because of the joy that a child is born into the world. So with you, now is your time of grief, but I will see you again and you will rejoice, and no one will take away your joy. What is coming, guys? It's going to be really tough. But what is coming is going to be so great that the agony that you went through beforehand will be forgotten. Yesterday, I got to meet one of my former high school students, a young lady named Miranda. She had a baby 3 weeks ago. She didn't go with any epidural. She didn't use any pain blockers. She's tiny. I mean, she's maybe this tall. Okay, and she didn't go through any of those things. And I got to meet the baby yesterday. Okay, and she goes, "Oh, look at my baby." She didn't say, "Boy, did that hurt." All her focus was on how great and wonderful and adorable her baby was. Newborns aren't that adorable. I mean, I'm a terrible person to say that. You know, when they're like a month or two old, they start to get a lot cuter. But, you know, this was an adorable baby, 3 weeks old. She didn't share with me the agony that she went through. Just share with me the joy of having this child. Now, Paul writes about this idea that it's brutal now, but it gets so much better later. Chapter 8 of Romans, Paul writes, "For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed in us." Sufferings of this present time. How many people have got aches and pains? Don't raise your hands. Okay, we're not looking for a sympathy choir today. But there are all kinds of sufferings that people go through. We know they go through all manner of illness, cancer, heart disease. I was talking to a gentleman yesterday. He had a 4-way bypass. And he said, yeah, they're not done yet. Hey, there's more to go through. They got to replace a valve in him. I can't imagine. You know, they got to split the rib cage. They got to wire you back together. That's all kinds of suffering. People go through that. They go through the suffering of a loved one passing away. The wife of the late Big John Stone, again, the funeral yesterday in Illinois, she's sobbing and she says, "I don't know what to do with my life. My life was so bound up in him. I'm lost." All of this is covered here. The sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. For the creation waits in eager expectation, or in eager longing rather, for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility. Nothing works the way it should. not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. So it can be really tough right now. Now, we who live in the Western Hemisphere, we actually don't deal with a whole lot. We have people in America who are in poverty, but if you go to what's called the 1040 band, which is where most of the population of the world exists, you go to India and those other countries, places in Africa. They're suffering. Can you imagine trying to feed your family on $1 a day? And many people, they're trying to do this. And some of the persecution, some of the governments killing their own citizens. We have it so incredibly good. I don't think any of us are facing starvation. But yet you go to some of these 1040 window countries, and a lot of people are starving to death. Children, I think the figure is like 30,000 children today will die of starvation. We've got it so easy. We don't really suffer. But all the suffering is in the world, even suffering that bad, will seem meaningless because of what God's going to reveal, because of the glory that he's going to bring about when he reveals his final plan. Revelation chapter 21. Again, familiar territory for most of us. The Apostle John writes, I'll get there eventually. Here we go. Chapter 21. John says, Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. Now I note that heaven is a wonderful place, filled with glory and grace. Do you know that song? Okay, full of glory. I'm going to see my Savior's face. Heaven is a wonderful place. I want to go there. Okay, a wonderful place. But the new heaven is going to make the old heaven look like a worn-out, rusty thing. I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. Surfers lament that, but I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully adorned for her husband. Then I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Now the dwelling of God is with men, and he will live with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them, and there will be no more mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. This is going to be great. Can you imagine a world where there is no more pain? All kinds of pain, physical, emotional, sociological pain. Oh, no suffering. This is going to be great. I want to go there. Okay, that's where I want to be. Jesus says in John chapter 14, Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have... See, if it were not so, this is... You go from one translation to the next, sometimes the words get a little bit odd. So, if we're not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? Okay. Again, as I mentioned when we went through this passage, it's not that Jesus says, hey, I've got a mansion down the street, down the block, around the corner, a few miles away, and you can hang out there. It's he says, my Father has a room in his house for you. If you get to stay in my house, that means you're welcome. That means Saturday mornings, you get to have some of Anne's wonderful waffles that she makes. They're so good. And if you're at our house on a Saturday night, you get to have homemade pizza. Again, we have this kitchen-made mixer. Ladies, if you don't have one, put that on your Christmas list. You can get them on eBay a lot cheaper. This wonderful mixer, and it mixes this wonderful pizza bread dough. And sometimes what Ann does with this is we have extra pizza bread dough, and she takes this and she puts cinnamon gooey stuff in it. And it's so good. And if you're at my house, if you're a guest at my house, and you get to sample some of this stuff. Plus, whenever we have pizza, you get to smell bacon. Okay, at my house, because we got to have bacon on pizza. But and it's not that. Hey, you know what? I'm going to welcome you into the house on the other side of the park that we live in. Yeah, you won't be able to smell the bacon from there. You won't be able to smell the cinnamon bread. you won't be able to smell the pumpkin snickerdoodles. Oh, they're so good if we're on the other side. But God has a place for us in his house. Okay? So it's better. It's better than anything we're going to know. If I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to myself, that where I am you may also be. Imagine how silly it would be to say to somebody, oh, I've got a room prepared for you. Breakfast is on the table, but I'm not going to call you when it's ready. It'll just sit there and get cold. That's not the idea. In his house. So this is what God has prepared for us. Now, this anguishing time, and I mentioned this last week, it's the idea of hurting like heaven. People will say, oh, it hurt like hell. No, it didn't. You have no idea. If you say something hurts like hell, you don't know. Any hurt of hell, so to speak, would be a destructive thing, not meant to build anything. But the hurts of heaven, again, you go in for surgery. It always hurts. How many of you love to go to the dentist? Wow, okay. It always hurts. Because you got to pay the bill at the end. That hurts the most. But those hurts are designed to be healing hurts. Okay? We know that, Rhonda went through the surgery. It hurts. She has to use a walker. Is she using the walker? Okay, still using the walker. Okay, use the walker because it hurts. And if it doesn't hurt and you don't use the walker, you're going to fall, and that will hurt. But those rehabilitative hurts, that's the hurts of heaven. So as we go through adversity, we should never say it hurts like hell. No, God forbid. It hurts like heaven because God is working his glory and his grace in my life to make me into the person that he wants me to be through this adversity. So let things hurt like heaven. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the late, great singer-songwriter Mark Hurd, but one of my favorite songs. The lyric goes, as this planet falls around the sun, trapping us in the orbit, creation groans in unison like a race of frightened orphans. The darkness of this raging storm is covering up our portals, but a yearning for the light is born in the heart of every mortal, and day to day we ache with the pain that plagues this creation. Night to night we lie awake and await its restoration. So just because things look bad, they're not. Okay? God is in control of this. So continuing, Jesus says, though I have been speaking figuratively, now a lot of times when he's speaking figuratively, it should have been pretty easy to figure out. I mean, we all use metaphor, and that should be easy to figure out, but they have their preconceived notions, their matrices of understanding. Though I've been speaking figuratively, a time is coming when I will no longer use that kind of language, but I can tell you plainly about my Father. And that day you will ask in my name. I'm not saying that I will ask the Father on your behalf. What Jesus has to be referring to is the continuing ministry of the Holy Spirit, because Jesus, shortly after this, is going to be crucified. He will not be able to convey personally knowledge anymore, but he will do this by his Spirit. If you go back to chapter 16, verses 12 through 15, he says, I'm going to send the Spirit to you to guide you into all truth. And Jesus said very plainly, some of the stuff I've got for you is too much for you to bear. It's just too heavy. Now, what's really cool here, and I love this, is that we get direct access to the Father. Direct access. We do not have to go through any saint. Okay, some people, they pray to St. Christopher. St. Christopher, protect us. Thinking that, okay, St. Christopher, he's got pull with the big guy upstairs. He's got pull with God. So if I ask St. Christopher to ask God, God likes St. Christopher a lot. That's why he's St. Christopher. He likes him a lot. And so St. Christopher has got pull with God. So go to Christopher so that God will, give you some favor. You don't need St. Christopher. You don't need, what are some of the other saints? I don't even know them. Bartholomew, any name will work. There's St. John, there's probably St. Aloysius. I think there's actually a St. Aloysius. All kinds of saints. You don't need to go to them. We get to go directly to the throne of grace. Directly. And so that's the access that we have. Direct access to the Father. No need to ask for help. So no, the Father himself loves you because you have loved me and have believed that I came from God. So you've entered into this. This is great. Take advantage of it. Now, Jesus, again, he's very, very clear. I came from the Father and entered the world. Go all the way back to the beginning of the Gospel of John. Okay, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Now I am leaving the world and going back to the Father. This is pretty plain talking. What happens in the Garden of Gethsemane? The crowd comes to arrest Jesus, and what do the disciples do? They pull out their fish and they start to attack the Roman soldiers. No, yeah, I mean, Peter takes off the sword, takes out his sword. Gee, put it away, Peter. This is what God has got planned. Okay, this is what my Father has got planned. So he's, again, very, very clear, and they have a hard time accepting the truth that Jesus was teaching. This is so great. Then Jesus' disciples said, now you are speaking clearly and without figures of speech. Now we can see that you know all things and that you do not even need to have anyone ask you questions. This makes us believe that you have come from God. Now, Hugonian thinking doesn't see this, and I could be wrong here, does not see this as Jesus going, yay! Wow, you believe at last! I think it's like, oh, finally after all this time, you believe at last? And he knows that they really didn't believe fully what was going on. They said, we believe in your identity. Yes, we've got this. And I think Jesus rolls the eyes. Oh, great. You believe at last. You've had so much opportunity to believe. Early on, Nicodemus understood this plainly, okay, who Jesus was. Nobody could do what you're doing unless God were with him. They saw the creative miracles, again, to go back time and time again. When Jesus took the bread and the fish and fed a multitude, he's creating matter in his hand. He's making atoms. They saw this. Turns water into wine. They saw this. They see the man with the shriveled hand in the synagogue that the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the teachers of the law, they put him out there on the Sabbath just to see if Jesus would heal him. And what does Jesus say? Stretch out your hand. The guy, it's like, I can't stretch out my hand, okay? It's here for a reason because it's shriveled. But he stretches out his hand and he's healed. This is restorative. The tendons, the ligaments, the nerves, everything now works. The muscles are there. They weren't there before. The disciples saw all this. Of course they should have figured out exactly who Jesus was. Even the demons. You're the Son of God. Just, shh. Quiet on that one, okay? Everybody, it was so clear. And the disciples, the closest people, had a hard time getting it. So sometimes we're going to have a hard time getting it. So again, you believe at last. But a time, okay, this is great. But a time is coming, and has come, when you will be scattered, each to his own home, and you will all leave me alone. Yeah, I'm not alone, for my Father is with me. So it's almost like the disciples, wow, we get it all now. I think that Jesus is saying here, yeah, wait, it gets worse. I think that sometimes we think that we get it. And God is like, well, just wait. It gets worse from our perspective, but not from his. Jesus says, I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you're going to have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. In me. Okay? Where is our peace? Our peace is not in the world. Look at the headlines. Iran sends missiles over Israel. Now Israel is we're going to send some back to you. Okay, and all this stuff, Ukraine, all these upheavals throughout the world, and we can go, oh no, how can we have peace? We have peace in Christ. We know how this all ends. So why am I worried? It's silly. Even in my own life, this might happen, that might happen, and I might say, oh God, I'm anxious. God, I'm worried. Now, I understand. Some things are difficult. But we know that God is sovereign. We know that Christ is working in our lives. So really, do we need to be anxious? Do we need to worry? Now, if you're going into surgery, okay, especially if you've never had a surgery before, okay, be a little bit worried, be a little bit anxious, but trust the doctor, trust the outcome. So a lot of times we're anxious, we worry in vain. Who is in charge? See, we worry because we don't know who's in charge. If somebody very competent is in charge, why worry? If I were to call Dale over to fix something electrical on my house, am I going to worry? Nah, Dale's got this. It's all easy. If I have a carpentry problem, I'll call Rick, and say, do I need to worry? No, he's got this. If I'm skydiving and I want to know how skydiving, I'm going to talk to John, but I'm not going. Imagine there's somebody, they're going to go skydiving with John, and they're just anxious, they're worried. Just trust John. He knows what he's doing. How many times, John, have you jumped? A couple thousand. Okay, all right. Okay, I think we can figure John knows what he's doing because the average age is 75, and we can trust that John's not pushing that limit by skydiving. It's a great thing. He's good at it. Now, in the world, we are going to have trouble. Don't expect to not have trouble. Things are annoying sometimes. Things are hurtful sometimes. There are times that people don't like us. When I was working in the school systems, there were people that I never talked to them about God at all. But they knew I was a pastor, and they knew I read the Bible and things like this, and they just despised me. I never said a bad word to them. I would always be nice. I try to help them. But they despised me, and if they could give me trouble, they would. In this world, you will have trouble. But why worry about it? Did Jesus have trouble in this world? Oh, yeah. The cross, that's like extreme trouble. Was he worried about it? No, he didn't like the cross, didn't like that final separation from his Father. But he knew the result. So, the world is going to be brutal to us. We're actually going to get done a little bit early because I started early today. And everyone says, yes. Now, understand that we are in this for the long haul. And there is a lot more to understand. The more that we think we have it all figured out, the more we find that we do not. The great philosopher Socrates, also known as Socrates, he went to a meeting of the smartest people. And he said, guys, let me tell you something. I'm smarter. I'm the smartest person here. I'm smarter than any of you. They were, Socrates, what? How vain, how arrogant. And Socrates' response was, no. I know very, very little. You think you know everything. That makes me wiser and smarter than the rest of you. Because you think you know what you're doing and talking about. And I will freely admit that I don't. So I'm smarter than the rest of you. We think sometimes that we have all this theology figured out. I have talked to Calvinists, and I have talked to Arminians, and I have talked to amillennialists, and I have talked to extreme pre-tribulationists, and I have talked to, any theological perspective. I've talked to these people, and they say, no, this is the only way to look at this. I have it all figured out. And I just, okay, wow, I'm glad that you do. I'm content to know that I don't. I've got some thoughts. There are some theological positions that I go, wow, this dichotomy is fascinating. This paradox is fascinating. I'm not sure what to do with this. There are some incredibly smart, godly people on this side of this. There are some incredibly smart people on that side of this. I don't know. I'm okay with that. And I think that even when I'm before Jesus, I'm not going to get it all figured out. He's infinite. I will still be finite. So I'm going to trust him with this. You're not going to have it all figured out. So therefore, we continue to rely upon the Lord relationally. Use the access that you have all the time. Talk to God all the time. And sometimes we like to figure it out by ourselves. Don't do it. Talk to God. Seek his counsel. And when we talk to God, the biggest thing that we seek from God is wisdom and understanding. It's the biggest thing to be asking for. Lord, I'm in this circumstance. Help me to understand how to honor you fully in this. Expect the world to be pathetically wretched. As the world is pathetically wretched, our response should be, so? What do you expect? I hear people talk about how terrible and awful and divisive the politics are in this day and age. And they are. They're terrible. They're awful. They're divisive. Go back a couple hundred years. Look at some of the political campaigns. Who ran against Jackson? Do you remember? Okay, but the Andrew Jackson campaign and whoever he was going up against, it was vicious. Who was he? Okay, yeah, maybe the great Ulysses S. Grant. Terrible. They would say awful things about each other. Now, they didn't have all the cell phone stuff and the media to broadcast it, but they had pamphlets they'd pass out. Some of the Lincoln Douglas debates, they were awful to each other. Politics has always been awful. How about that Julius Caesar guy? Et tu, Brute, then die, Caesar. It's always been awful. And God has always been sovereign. Okay. I don't care who wins this election coming up. Why do I not care? Because God is sovereign. And no matter who gets in, God is sovereign. And his sovereignty will not be violated. And it could be that the person I don't want elected or the person I do want elected doesn't matter to God. What matters to God is the hearts of his people, the believers in the United States of America, rising up and being the people of God and causing the very changes that we expect politicians to make. Okay. God is sovereign. I expect the world to be pathetically wretched. Elijah in the cave says to God, God, the nation of Israel is pathetically wretched. The people, they're doing this, they're doing that, they're doing this, they're doing that. And what does God say to Elijah? Elijah, I got work for you to do. Shh, get busy. I got stuff for you to do. Don't worry about that. I got this. Psalm chapter 2. I love this. This is so great. Why do the nations conspire and the peoples plot in vain? Their plots are useless. Bunch of silly doofuses. And the kings of the earth take their stand against they gather together against the Lord and against his anointed one. Okay. Now, whatever you think of Hulk Hogan, just for the illustration, let's say you have a lot of 5-year-olds, group of 20 of them, and they're looking at Hulk Hogan, we're going to take you out. And there's the Hulk. Okay, this is going to be great. It's not going to work. So here, the kings of the earth take their stand, and the rulers gather together against the Lord and against his anointed one. Let us break their chains, they say, and throw off their fetters. The one enthroned in heaven laughs. The Lord scoffs at them. He rebukes them. And God's got this. It might seem like it's chaos, but it's not. God is working through even things as awful as the cross of Christ. What is going to happen next? And I think that was what the disciples had to learn. What is going to happen next? And the best answer that you can have is, I don't know. But what's that? Whatever God's got. Okay. I do not need to worry about what is next. That's God's business. My business is to say to the world, to say to myself, to say to everybody, I will follow Christ and Christ alone. I don't care what else happens. I'm with Jesus. And then, come what may, I want to rest all my days in the presence and the goodness of Jesus and who he is. So it doesn't matter. The disciples, they want to know all the answers. What they really need to know is Jesus. And I'm going to just cheat ahead in the Gospel of John. Anybody have their Bible open? Okay. Okay. All right, I'll turn there then. Chapter 17, verse 3. We'll do a sword drill. Whoever gets there first, just read it.
This is the life eternal, that they might know that thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent.
Now, this is all eternal life is. It's all it is. It's all life is to know the Father and to know the Son through the Spirit. That's it. There's nothing else. So what am I going to worry about? My walk with Jesus. That's got to be my concern. It's got to be my passion. The world's going to hell. It is. You can't stop it. We're going to do all the damage we can and proclaim the gospel of Jesus. But it's going to be a mess. It's okay. God's got this.